When we think about instant riches, we normally think of winning the lottery, but that's only one way to win tons of cash. There are loads of people out there who prefer to try their luck on other forms of gambling, and they can become incredibly good at it. These gamblers are considered the greatest of all time. They're so good, you can bet the Vegas casinos all wished these geniuses had never stepped through their doors. Let's find out why. Number 10. Edward O. Thorpe. Not many people are able to change the face of gambling forever, but Edward O. Thorpe's brilliant gambling technique is now iconic, even among people who know nothing about gambling. He started out as a math professor specializing in the field of probability. Some of you might be able to tell how he became famous. He developed a program that would help him determine probability in a game of blackjack. And this is how he invented card counting. He began testing his new theory at casinos in Reno, Tahoe, and of course, Las Vegas. But for that, he needed money. That's where Manny Kimmel stepped in. He was also a professional gambler, and he was surprisingly wealthy. He had heard about Thorpe's card counting theory and obviously thought it was a groundbreaking idea, if it worked. So he agreed to finance Thorpe's test and handed him 10 grand to take to the casinos. Thorpe hit the blackjack tables, and it wasn't long before he knew the idea worked. On his first trial run, he won an impressive 11 grand in a single weekend. It wasn't long before news spread. Soon, blackjack players everywhere were talking about this card counting theory that they knew would revolutionize the game. But that meant the casinos were onto him too. He became famous for wearing disguises like fake beards and wraparound glasses so nobody at the casino could realize who they were up against. But he realized he could make money another way too. In 1962, he published a book on his theory, so he found himself a partner named Alan Woods. Woods was also known in gambling circles. He was an expert horse racing gambler. Together, Woods and Benter spent months sharing their expertise, and they developed software that allowed them to analyze horse racing. All it needed was 16 variables to be able to determine an accurate bet. To date, it's still the most successful horse betting analysis software of all time. Benter took the software to Hong Kong and continued to refine it to help him beat the highly successful horse betting market there. And he was even more successful than you could imagine. Some estimates say that by using the software to determine what bets he should place, he could win between $5 and $10 million in a single day. With an annual income from betting standing at a whopping $100 million, Benter is considered one of the wealthiest gamblers who ever lived. There's no doubt Benter's invention is seriously impressive, but even with all that money, he'll probably still never be as famous as the next person on our list. Number 8. Wild Bill Hickok. You've probably heard the name Wild Bill Hickok before, but you might not realize why this Wild West icon is so famous. He was born James Butler Hickok in 1837 before gaining the nickname Wild Bill when he became a bit of a folk hero in the West. A lot of his fame came from fictional and outlandish stories he would spread about himself, but not all of the crazy stories about him were a lie. He headed west from Illinois at the age of 18. He was already a fugitive and loved the look of the vigilante lifestyle you could have out in the West. He worked as a stagecoach driver at first, before weirdly becoming a lawman. After that, he joined the Army during the Civil War, where he worked as a spy. And yes, before you ask, that story was true. After the war, he became famous as a marksman, actor, gunslinger, and importantly, a professional gambler. He later became one of the first people ever to be included in the Poker Hall of Fame. But that was in 1979, almost 100 years after his death. We only mention it because his death is actually pretty important in gambling history. He was so good at poker that he made a lot of people angry. And that was a dangerous thing to do in the Wild West. In 1876, he found himself in Nuttall and Mann Saloon in Deadwood, located in present-day South Dakota. While enjoying a drink, he was also taking the time to win a poker game. And a very drunk man named Jack McCall had lost a lot of money to Hickok's skill. He was losing so badly that Hickok told him to stop playing and offered Jack some of his winnings to pay for breakfast. Jack took the money, but was apparently insulted by the gesture. The next day, Hickok returned to play more poker with other men in the saloon. He normally sat with his back to the wall with one eye on the entrance, but on this day, the only seat available was facing away from the door, and nobody at the table would swap places. A few minutes later, Jack McCall entered the saloon and pulled his gun on Hickok, firing at point-blank range to the back of his head. At that moment, Hickok was holding two pairs, black aces and eights. So today, if you ever hear that hand referred to as the dead man's hand, you'll know why. Hickok was so skilled at poker that he lost his life for it. The next person on our list also lost a lot, but unlike Hickok, he only had himself to blame. Number 7. Billy Walters. Billy Walters didn't start out a rich man. He had a rough start in life. His father died when he was 2 years old. Instead of making sure he was okay, his mother decided to make a run for it. He was effectively orphaned, and was lucky to have a grandmother who cared enough about him to take him in and raise him. But they were pretty poor his whole childhood. So it's not so surprising that he started gambling at the shocking age of 9. He did a paper round and decided to bet all his earnings on the 1955 World Series. Unfortunately, he lost it all. The losing streak would continue for over a decade. By the age of 22, he'd lost an eye-watering $50,000. But his gambling luck would change in his late 30s. In Atlantic City, he got his first taste of real success by betting strategically on a biased roulette wheel. And he won a whopping $3.8 million. Now he knew he was in the right field, but he soon realized that sports betting was his real friend. And his incredible winning streak lasted 30 years. He'd place bets on basketball, NFL, and college football, winning almost every time. But he wasn't just lucky. He used computer analysis to help him figure out who the winner would most likely be. And it sure worked in his favor. Some of his wins were mind-blowing. He once won $3.5 million betting on the Super Bowl. Another time, he won $2.2 million with a smart bet on a college football game. You're probably wondering how he got away with it. Well, bookmakers were definitely onto him, so he started sending in other people to place bets for him, helping him avoid suspicion and continue his winning streak. That's how he became the most successful sports gambler of all time. But in 1987, he decided to quit gambling and focus on business. That was a huge mistake. He was found guilty of insider trading in 2017 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He probably should have just taken the money. He had so much he didn't need to invest it in the first place. Billy and almost everyone else on this list so far used something to help them place bets at the World Series. How much money has he made playing poker? We'll get to that in a moment. First, we need to address his nickname, the Poker Brat. He earned that nickname by letting his emotions get the better of him throughout his years as a player. He's well known for throwing huge temper tantrums when things aren't going his way, and he's shown up late for big games so often that he has become known for it. In other words, he's the kind of player who probably would have been kicked out of poker circles if he wasn't one of the best in the business. But his attitude hasn't hurt his career. He released his first book called Play Poker Like the Pros in 2003 and has since released 2 more, which only increased his profile. But he didn't need to, because he's gathered a whopping total of $24 million. Winning that kind of money playing poker is only a dream to most players. But the next player on our list has a collection of accolades that Hellmuth never achieved. Number 4. Doyle Brunson. Doyle Brunson recently retired in 2018, but not before making a name for himself as possibly the most influential poker player in history. He won the main event at the World Series of Poker twice, first in 1976 and again the following year. That makes him one of only 4 players to even win more than once. But if that wasn't impressive enough, he's also won a World Poker Tour title, making him the only person in history ever to win both tournaments. He also achieved another incredible milestone when he became the first person ever to win $1 million at a poker tournament. All these accolades mean he's a bit of a legend in poker circles. There's no doubt he's one of the smartest players of all time. He's definitely not the kind of person you want to see walking into your casino. But his status as a legend also means he has a lot of other opportunities waiting for him out there. He's written several books, including Super System, which is a book widely considered to be the biggest authority on poker ever published. But his expertise has also taken him to Hollywood, where he's done cameos in movies and also served as a consultant. Basically, he trains actors how to play like real poker players. He's done that on 2 big poker movies. The first one was Lucky You, starring Robert Duvall and Eric Bana, and the second was the film The Grand, which was released in 2007. It just goes to show how far brilliant gambling can really take you. Winning the World Series is a pretty big achievement, but the next player on our list holds a pretty unique position in that tournament. Number 3. Nick Dandalos. Nick Dandalos, aka the Greek, turned gambling into a tourist attraction. He was born in Greece to a wealthy family. At the age of 18, he decided to move to the US, which he could do pretty easily thanks to his parents' money. But he started to make a name for himself as a gambler when he hopped over from Chicago to Montreal and began betting on horses. Soon he had a whopping $500,000 in his pocket. And this was back in the early 1900s, so that really was a ton of cash. He took it all the way back to Chicago. But shockingly, he managed to lose every cent gambling on dice and card games. So, why do we have a gambler that basically just lost it all in our list of smartest gambling moments? Well, that wasn't the end of the story. See, Dandalos decided he was going to get better, and he was smart enough to do it. He trained himself to become a brilliant poker player, and by 1949, he took on the ultimate challenge. He went up against one of the most famous poker players of all time, Johnny Moss. The owner of the Horseshoe Casino was more than happy to set up the games, knowing that Moss was famous enough to draw a crowd. But as Moss and Dandalos played, the pair only got better. Soon, their poker games had become a major tourist attraction, and crowds were flocking to watch them play. This is where the idea for the World Series of Poker started. But that's not the only thing Dandalos achieved. It's expected for poker players to lose sometimes, and he claims he went from riches to rags and back again many times. But during his lifetime, it's estimated he won a mind-blowing $500 million. Dandalos might have inspired the invention of the World Series of Poker, but the next person on our list mastered the tournament. Number 2. Phil Ivey. Phil Ivey started playing poker when he was just 8 years old. Back then, it wasn't for money. It was just a friendly game between him and his grandfather. But his grandfather had no idea he was creating one of the most unbeatable poker players of all time. Before he was old enough to be allowed in, Phil started playing at Atlantic City casinos using a fake ID. That's how he earned the nickname No Home Jerome. He turned pro at just 20 years old, and he soon became the youngest player ever to win 10 World Series of Poker bracelets. He obviously also competed in the World Tour, playing the final table 9 times and winning in 2008. By the way, that win came with a $1.5 million prize. But he kinda didn't need it. He's one of the wealthiest players of all time, with total live earnings of more than $30 million. As if that wasn't enough, he's also a keen online poker player, and he's just as successful on those platforms, winning an estimated $19 million. But despite his skills and fame, he's had a few scandals. Although the scandals arrived at the baccarat tables. Ivy got into legal disputes with two casinos, one in London and another in Atlantic City, after he was caught edge counting. This sophisticated technique is difficult to master, mostly because it requires the player to trick the dealer into showing them where the high-value cards are. They might, for example, ask the dealer to rotate the high-value cards because they believe it brings them good luck. That's what he took into the casinos in 1992. He felt lucky, but he had no idea he was going to create the longest and biggest winning streak in the history of gambling. His winning streak was so impressive that it even earned its own nickname, The Run. You're not going to believe it, but the run started the moment he walked into his first Vegas casino with $50 and continued for over 2 years. By the end, in 1995, he'd won a mind-boggling $40 million. Unfortunately, the run ended in a dramatic way. Sure, he lost it all, but he's still considered possibly the greatest gambler of all time. Don't want to leave the casino yet? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Obviously, these gamblers are the smartest ever, but not everyone is so lucky. Some people step into the casino and wish they'd never tried their luck. We've already seen that casinos don't like winners, so imagine how they treat cheaters. This is what really happens if you're caught cheating in Vegas.